the emotion takes over. And takes over the logic brain and the thinking part of our brain, which logically you can say like, well, it's really not that big a deal logically, but the emotion takes over. That happens a lot when certain things get triggered. So some of that is to begin to recognize when the emotions are taking over and do things to interrupt the cycle. And there are little things that you can do to get yourself out of the emotional state. And Stacey talks about emotional regulation, but just a couple of things. One of the things you can do, we would call sort of micro meditations. And I'm not talking about sitting there, for 15 minutes. I'm talking do something with your physical body that's going to distract your emotions. So whether it's, okay, I'm going to take 15 seconds and I'm going to feel all of the ridges on my fingertips. I'm just going to rub them together.
Make my attention stay there.
And I'm just going to focus my attention solely on that for a certain amount of time. If you can do it longer, great. If you got 2 minutes and that's all you're thinking about. And when the intrusive thought is, I can't believe so-and-so did this, that's the dumbest thing. And you let it go. Sometimes you're in a phase of life where you are trying to get established in a career and you need to kind of put in the effort. Like I think of several instances. A lot of times that can take over and then plates start to drop around and people don't recognize when the plates are dropping, and that's part of the problem. But you give 100% at work. The challenge is that your 100% at work can't preclude giving 100% to your kids who may need it. Right? Who may need some attention, right? And so that becomes the challenge. How do you, instead of work-life balance, it's sort of energy balance and emotional energy.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's good.
And I think people always think of balance as 50-50.
Yeah.
It's never 50-50.
It's never 50-50.
And it shouldn't be 50-50. You definitely shouldn't be giving 50% of your life to work.
No.
And that's my opinion.
The Kintsugi basically means that something is basically more beautiful for having been broken. On the one hand, I don't like to think of people as broken, but we feel that way sometimes, don't we?
This is Alone and Unafraid. Welcome back to Alone and Unafraid, where we explore the intersections of everyday life, mental health, and mindset with ordinary people who have or are now facing incredible challenges. My name is Thad King, and I'm your host. We've got our co-host with us today, the one and only Tyler Huckett.
Hi.
What's up, buddy?
Oh, nothing.
All right, today we're talking about corporate culture, why it often feels fake, bland, and frustrating. We'll dive into the lack of mental health systems in corporate America and how it affects personal and professional growth, why veterans struggle with transitioning into this environment. And joining me today is Stacey and Jared Haslam. They're the co-founders of the Kintsugi Institute. Stacey is a pre-licensed therapist. She's passionate about bringing the healing power of therapy into the professional world. And Jared, with nearly 20 years of corporate experience, including vice president of production and strategy, or correction, that's production strategy and planning. Is that, did I say it right?
It gets really confused sometimes, but it's product planning, product strategy.
Product strategy.
There you go. Yeah,
okay.
There you go.
I actually have product written down here, but my brain went to production.
Yeah, that works.
But that was vice president of product strategy and planning at Nissan. He's dedicated to transforming corporate cultures to foster personal and professional growth, emphasizing the importance of mental health and authentic human connection in driving business success. Jared and Stacey, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that introduction. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I kind of fumbled it a bit, but
hey, that's okay.
This is real time. So
I love it.
So you guys have an interesting kind of take on this. You don't often find an executive from corporate America and a therapist getting together. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of those out in the world, but they don't work together and come together to take their wheelhouses per se and kind of combine them into one thing. But that's what you guys have done, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we found that combination is actually really powerful. because it really strikes at the foundations of really performance, if you will, but even deeper than that, just basic life satisfaction. And we found that, at least in my case, that the language of therapy was so powerful, but so foreign in the corporate world that it was almost inaccessible as an executive. And at the same time, for therapists who can have such a huge impact in the corporate world, how to communicate to the business world is really tough. That's not their wheelhouse. And so our journeys kind of, our individual journeys brought us to the point where we're like, hey, maybe we can pull these things together and have a really strong impact in the corporate world for professionals, which a lot of times mental health is just completely overlooked. And I went through my own challenges, and Stacey went through her own challenges that took us down these paths that could join into something that we feel is really, really powerful. So that's kind of how we teamed up. It helps that we're married, but yeah, that's it isn't a combination that you see too often, and that's part of why we're trying to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty potent combination, because it's clearly lacking in corporate America, at least from our standpoint, where Tyler and I work for a corporation, and we kind of, I don't want to say we're lucky, but where we work it's got its issues. Every job does. But we temper that with a lot of the employees are former military. So we kind of get it, I guess. We all come from a generally speaking, a common background. There seems to be a somewhat of a clash between for lack of a better term, the doers, the people that they're doing the job, and then the support personnel. It's just because we're from Mars and they're from Venus, and they don't really. And so corporate, when we talk about corporate things, it seems to be a little bit of a disconnect. It's probably with us. We're probably the problem, but that's been difficult. I think for us, right? I mean, would you say, Tyler, is that?
Yeah, and I'm just not geared for this world in general on the corporate side of the house. I just oil and water, probably.
Well, yeah.
Well, I think a lot of times there's no language for it. And so, Tyler, when I hear you say you're not geared for it, we found that, at least where I was working, we found that the skill set brought, particularly by the veterans, by the military, we had a lot of people in executive ranks that served in the military. One of my great friends and colleagues is a veteran, and he brought some of the principles into his. He was one of my most effective managers, and to this day we still talk and work on things together. So there's a lot of skills that come from that background experience that are so valuable in frankly in any endeavor, whether you want to call it corporate or whatever. I think where it gets sort of runs afoul is. It really depends on the corporation and the stage that the corporation's in, because the skill set that corporations tend to value changes depending on where they're at in their corporate life cycle. And so, like, if you were in a startup company, for example, where you just got to knock stuff out, then you may feel more comfortable. You may feel, because it's open field. You just got to run. You just got to, every action is geared towards moving the needle. And so you're just going and you're just doing. And so startups tend to favor that mentality, whereas more established companies tend to favor politics, tend to favor power influence. Yeah. And to those, particularly, I know, Thad, Tyler, you guys have a background in special forces, which I can just imagine is very, like, you go, you have to. Like, the politics can be really, really frustrating.
Yeah.
Really frustrating.
Just anticipating getting to talk to you guys, I had a lot of curiosities and questions about that very thing. You know, you come from military, and what is your purpose? What's your goal? What matters? You guys, I mean, tell me. For you guys, what matters?
Well, we were trying to figure question. That out. Yeah. And that's why we got a podcast, because we don't know.
What would your commanding officer say? Like, what matters?
like if you just drew parallels back to, when we were in the mission mattered, right? Because at the end of the day, it was putting bad guys away was high up on the list, but also just being there with your buddies and supporting them, right? So you can do, and really I think what I found out is that you can do any shit job out there as long as the people are right. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really, the end result almost doesn't matter. It just matters the people that are around you. Because you can do, but it helps when you don't have a choice and you signed a contract and
you're
right.
There's no way out. It's jail.
Yeah. You're just like here, like, all right, cool.
I hear that. Well, that's actually exactly what I thought. I wondered if you would say like mission and people. And that's right. What I'm hearing. What matters to your boss at this corporate job?
Yeah.
Dollar bills.
I think that's where we kind of have a disconnect, because we feel, and I'm speaking for Tyler here, so tell me if I'm wrong.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure I'm right, but our problem, at least my problem, is the things that's important to them might not hold. We're at a miscompare with our values of what I think is important, and I'm not saying this about the company that I work. I'm just saying in general, I feel like I need a strong sense of purpose, and then you can just cut me loose. I don't need a lot of direction. I don't need, I'm used to working with, hey, this is your mission. This is my intent. Go do these things. And then I'm comms out. You're not going to hear from me. And it's been very difficult in the corporate world where I vaguely have those things and we get these things, but then we're micromanaged at every single step of the way with 30 levels of bureaucracy in here. And we're like, this is the most inefficient. We could replace 4 of you guys with just one guy. It's like when you drive by and you see somebody working on the road and there's like one guy with a shovel and he's the one doing the work, but then there's 6 guys standing around watching that guy. That's like my experience in corporate America. Which kind of brings me, for Jared, what made you get out of it? I mean, you were, that seems like a pretty significant role at Nissan North America, not a small, and you've had a lot of experience in the auto industry. What made you get out of that and hook up with Stacey, and you guys kind of Wonder Twins this thing and make a pretty cool institute?
Well,
from the top.
From the top, take it from the top. Well, I need to sort of put the caveat on this that I was actually treated really well in my experience. I had a lot of things that were sort of that really fell in my favor. Quite honestly, I moved very quickly. And that wasn't necessarily my goal to move quickly. I wasn't like, hey, I want to, but I did find myself moving pretty quickly up the organization because I was given a lot of really cool opportunities. We spent some time over in Japan, which really changed the trajectory of our family. So Nissan was really good to me. There is a lot there. And, I guess this is the whole point of your podcast, is to be very like open and vulnerable about stuff. But so I got into a place where I struggled personally to do the same things that got me success in previous roles, and the situations changed with leadership, with goals of the company. Where I was not functioning as well as I needed to function. And Stacey would probably get on my case about being too hard on myself, but
because nobody said that to him. That's his takeaway, but whatever.
Well,
I think that's part of getting up that high though, right? It's you kind of I would say beat yourself down, but in the beginning, you're very critical of your actions and your movements and the way you do everything. And then eventually you push yourself up, but it's unsustainable.
Yeah, it really is. The motivation that's required to sustain at that level has to be very internally focused. Maybe that's not the right word to say. You have to have a really strong sense of self. Let me just put it that way. You have to really, that needs to be your locus of control. Because I saw a lot of people who had really bad intentions. I saw a lot of people, not a lot, but I saw people who were, had bad motivation, all of the above, but had strong sense of self. And that kind of showed up in a way that, oh, they must be really good. So I got to a place where, my ability to perform wasn't consistent with how I wanted to show up in the role that I was playing. And that didn't match well with my current management structure, which is there's always a political way to say things. You've probably found in your corporate world that
people, probably part of the frustration.
Yeah, people have a certain way to kind of phrase things, but I kind of clashed with my boss in that same moment. And I was seeing that the things that I was trying to do, they weren't getting through. They weren't making it through the normal channels. The stuff that I'd wanted to do couldn't happen, and that got all shifted. And then getting sideways with my boss, I took it all. I took it all on myself. And it was getting to a point like a really bad mental health place to be. People call it burnout. There's a lot of different words for it. But it was impacting Stacey. It was impacting my kids. It was impacting my own health. And it was getting to the point where if I didn't do something, I was afraid I was gonna either have a heart attack, or I was gonna get, it was gonna damage if it already hadn't damaged my relationship with Stacey and my kids. And so I just basically had to exit stage left and try to.
Was it manifesting itself like outwards, like, not vocally, but hey, you're like, I can't believe I'm surrounded by all these idiots. These guys are ridiculous. I'm so right about everything. How could they? Or was it more like internal? Like maybe I'm not, man. It's like maybe, that's, nothing specific, but, or is it more internal? Like, hey, maybe I'm not good enough to be here anymore. Maybe I've lost my usefulness. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, both. It was really a combination of those two things, and maybe a couple other things. I was not effective at getting my ideas into the system in a way that the system could digest them. I just wasn't good at it. And that sort of propagated this notion of, well, maybe my usefulness isn't there anymore. And then you combine those two things with, hey, here's some very direct feedback. You need to do this, 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 and this. And I'm like, yeah, I know I do. I just don't want to do it. Or I know I do. I don't have it in me right now. 4 years ago, I would have been all over that, but I'm out of energy. I'm out of emotional strength. I'm out of to do the things. And so I could see myself kind of heading in that direction about 2 years before I left. And I could see what was happening. And I started to try to cope with it in ways that were unhealthy. I reached out to HR, and I would say things like, hey, I could really use some coaching to kind of help me work through some coaching things. And anytime someone says something like that, they're thinking about skill set, like, hey, I need help giving feedback, or I need help with this sort of leadership principle. I need help delegating, or I need help sort of working the political aspect. And so you're looking for skill sets. So I got this coach, and she was a wonderful person. And, we did sort of these chemistry calls with a bunch of them, and I landed on a coach and started to work with her. And she would say things like, well, you gotta do this.
Very solution focused.
Mm-hmm. And like, well, you just got to do this. And I'm like, yeah, no, duh. I know I need to do that, or I know I need to protect my team, or I know I need to speak up for my team. I just can't get the willpower or the X, Y, and Z to do that. And she had no basis or skill set to actually delve into the stuff that was happening between my ears. And so she wasn't helping me really do that, because she was like, hey, do this. I'm like, yeah, I know I need to do that. And I remember getting a really bad performance review towards the end of it all. And I'm like, yeah, it's the first bad performance review I had in my entire career. And yeah, this is spot on. And yeah, I just don't have the emotional energy to tackle this stuff. I wasn't there. My relationship with my boss was completely shot, and trying to tackle that. And so, the coaching didn't help me. And so I was like, maybe I need to go see a therapist and try to work on therapist. And so I'm an executive in the company. They sponsored annual physicals where we would go and we would work with physicians every year. We had to. It was kind of mandatory. You got to go get a physical, make sure you're healthy so that you can stay on the job. But they didn't have any programs for mental health. And so, except for the insurance-based EAP program. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll just go avail myself of I think they give you 8 sessions of therapy in an EAP or something like that. A lot of companies have them. And so I sign up with an EAP, no guidance in the EAP about the type of providers that could connect with me. No guidance of like, here was their name, here was their credentials, and if they were in the state or not. So I just kind of, I scrolled down the list and picked one. And that's not a great way to pick a therapist. So I end up sitting across the table at like after work one night in the car on my phone with a social worker who was well credentialed and well qualified. I don't have anything negative to say about this individual, but as I'm sitting there talking to him, I'm like, I'm an executive at a high powered company and I'm thinking I should. And he's sitting at his kitchen table on his t-shirt at 9:00 at night saying, yeah, I can help you. And I'm like, the mismatch, didn't understand my context. Mm-hmm. I felt just really off base. And so I ended up not going.
You didn't have the language. You didn't have the understanding.
Yeah, we've actually seen that with therapists, like just same thing. I mean, I talk about it here all the time where I kind of therapist date and I just couldn't never get there because it was completely out of context from my background. And so I made a podcast as my therapy. And then,
I love it. Smart. Smart.
Well, it seems like the field of therapy wasn't super specialized, right? For a while, it was just kind of like, hey, I'm a therapist. I'm going to talk to whoever and they're going to come see me. And come to find out, having a specialty or having somebody who can speak the language is far more important than just having a general practitioner, so to speak, of therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right. It's actually really wise to shop therapists, kind of date them, as you said. But yeah, to find somebody, especially, knowing what it is that your history is, your background, you do have to kind of get educated, I suppose, on what kinds of options are even out there. And my particular brand of therapy, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm not a licensed practitioner counselor, there's like all different kinds. But an MFT, a marriage and family therapist, is just kind of a course that I wanted to take. This is a newer version of that. And I think it's really wonderful because it's a systemic based, it's a very contextual based kind of therapist. But even then you could look up any MFT and you would still need to date them and shop around and still look for, experience and stuff. So that's really where this was born. Jared and I, when we're working together, we're able to basically do coaching. And the good thing about that is, though, that it's systemic therapy informed. And we do have some delineators. What is therapy? What is coaching? Kind of a thing. But it's wonderful how his language and experience can inform my thinking and my perspective and vice versa.
Yeah. And that, Natalia, I think what you said about context and that you starting the podcast, I think is a great tool. That's actually part of that's one of the reasons why we started this in the first place, is because we recognize that there are not a lot of people out there, at least I couldn't find any, my resources didn't find any, that could speak the language and know the context that I was struggling with. And she was feeling it. She's like, I got to go to therapy for what's happening to Jared.
There's an impact on families too, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So you're sitting in your car talking to this guy in his t-shirt, and you said, yeah, this isn't going to work. And what happened after that?
Well, we talked for a little bit, and I was explaining some of the things that was happening sort of underneath, and he was confident he could help me, and I imagine that he could have, because the principles that therapists learn are very effective, whether they're from whatever kind of avenue you take, the trick is to kind of match up the avenue with the context and make the connection with the therapist where you can feel confident that they understand what you're going through. And so we had a conversation, but in the end, I'm sitting there kind of going like, I just don't feel like this guy's going to get what I'm going through. And treat it with like, I don't think he would have been bad, but I just don't think he would have treated it the same way that I would have kind of expected. And
yeah, you knew it was going to waste your time.
In essence, I just didn't feel like it was going to yield a whole lot.
Well, and so I open yourself up to somebody too, right? So you don't want to you don't want to have to open yourself up to this person to find out, it's not going to work. Then find somebody else. Then open yourself up to that person.
Really
exhausting.
It's exhausting.
It's hard.
Yeah, and you're kind of struggling through stuff. So you're like, man, I want to do this again and again and again. Right. So I didn't engage any deeper with this individual, and I finished out my time with coaching, and nothing changed. I just kept getting more and more, ineffective and frustrated and angry and stressed and not sleeping and all of the above. And I just kept going until I got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Can't do it to her. I can't do it with my family. So,
yeah, I think, I don't know if I'm in that season of life, but I'm definitely more angry all the time. And I think my family can tell, and it's one of those things. And it's not because I don't dislike my job. That's not it at all. I actually like the job. But it's all those corporate, where you kind of said it, you don't have the will to do anything. Tyler and I talk about this all the time. Like we know what right looks like, and we're highly, highly specialized in our field. And we've been doing this for years. We know exactly how to do it. And I would say that we're probably, because of our background, out of the box thinkers. We don't work well with hard and fast rules all the time. If things need to flex a little bit, they need to flex. I'm not talking, legal stuff. I'm just talking about, hey, the procedure is that clearly, it's not going to work in this situation. We need to, go around and do this. Oh, we can't do that.
The procedure is there to make a job, not to enhance the workflow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why can't we go around? Oh, it's because on page 47 of the handbook, it says you can't do this. I'm like, who cares about the book? Like, the book isn't applicable. It can't write every single possible scenario. We need to put our thinking caps on here and execute. And it just doesn't go well. It's people are more roadblock focused than solution focused, I guess.
Oh man, that's a hot button issue for me. You're poking at something that I think is really important. So I started to think a lot about that kind of stuff, because procedures, particularly in the industry that we're in, procedures are sort of the lifeblood of consistency and sustainability. Because when companies, like a larger, more established company, operates outside of procedures, it creates chaos in a lot of the downfield. So I understand the need for procedures. I understand where a lot of companies get in trouble is when they can't see past the procedure to something that's the greater principle. Like
exactly.
Like you said on page 44, it says the manual says. Well, okay, can we change the manual? Well, that's going to take an act of Congress to change the manual. And so it got to in a lot of these companies that's incredibly, incredibly frustrating. But here's the thing, and one of the things that Stacey and I as we thought about some of this stuff, when companies let procedures and processes get in the way of progress, it usually, I think it stems from an overinflated sense of sort of correctness of their procedures, or of correctness of the stability that's required, and the willpower and frankly ego to make a change. And this is why we talk a lot about sort of the underneath stuff that happens at leadership. Because when you really look at the obvious behaviors that people are exhibiting, tip of the iceberg, underneath is really what's driving it. And that's you can go as deep as you want to psychoanalyze this kind of stuff. And we're talking about like, what's driving your overinflated sense of ego? Like, what is that? Like, what happened in your past that makes you think that you have to be so special to
What's
crap
the
on all your
belief
employees?
inside saying that I have to do this or else there's, whatever.
And you can go into all that kind of stuff that's underneath. And we bucket that all in sort of emotional mental health. We like to call it mental fitness because it's kind of tough to get at that. You have to work at getting that kind of stuff. You have to do the work. But no one wants to do that work because it's hard and it's really challenging and it's really nebulous. But if you really want to move the needle, you got to touch that stuff. And I think if companies would figure out that if you touch that stuff in the appropriate way, and we can talk about that, what that looks like, but then you're going to get people to change their behavior sort of naturally. And you're going to create an environment. So like, think of it on a spectrum. I'll kind of step on a soapbox here. I'm sorry, but this is like, I've thought a lot about this. Think of it on a spectrum. Like, companies will pay for, hey, here, we've got a wellness program and we'll give you a membership to the gym, or we'll give you, better yet, we'll give you insurance. We have to by law give you insurance. Insurance is designed to just get you back to work. Like, they just want you back at work. So, and the whole reason why is because if you're not at work, then it's costing them money to have you sit down to work, right? So they want you back so they can reduce the cost. And so they figured out, well, if we keep you well, we're going to reduce our costs. So they're looking at reducing their costs to keep you well at work. And so they'll give you a wellness program. And even some of them will say, hey, listen, look, we're going to kind of virtue signaling. I call it virtue signaling, which is a sort of derogatory way to say what they do. But hey, we're going to pay for you to, yeah, we're going to pay for you to go run a marathon. We want you to be uber fit. But if you think about that physical fitness spectrum, none of that, or I shouldn't say none, that's probably too hard to say, but very little of that has an impact on their on-the-job performance, because a person that's a jerk when they're well is still going to be a jerk when they're really well, and is probably even more of a jerk if they're sick. So the physical fitness spectrum doesn't help anybody at work. But if you think about it from a mental health spectrum, like, we don't have language for it. Companies don't even know what that even means. So we can say, hey, listen, we're going to provide you some therapy if you got a really bad problem, if you got an addiction, or if you're depressed, like you got 8 sessions, go do therapy. But what does the wellness program look like for mental health? Nobody knows.
Doesn't exist.
Right? Very, very few people are talking about that. But what's the positive side of mental fitness? Can you imagine if everybody at work could handle feedback? Could handle negative feedback?
Oh my God, that would change the whole world.
It would change the whole world, right?
My roadblocks would get immensely better because I
like, hey, you're really bad at this, and this is how you fix feedback. It. Yeah.
Because I just tell them, and it doesn't go well for me.
Right? Well, why? Why doesn't it go well for you? Well, I would probably suggest that the person you're dealing with doesn't have the emotional intelligence, I wouldn't call it emotional fitness, to handle negative feedback in a constructive way. And how are they going to learn that kind of stuff? Well, companies just kind of expect that you either pick it up along the way, or that you were born with it, or you got it and we don't teach these kind of skills. And so if companies would figure out how to move everybody towards the positive mental fitness side of things, again, we don't have language for it very well. It's not in the dictionary, but move people that way. What would that do to the work environment? What would that do to cultures? What would that do to team performance? What would that do to the bottom line? I mean, the numbers at a high level are really clear. The companies that have engaged employees, and engaged employees are tied to their managers, outperform companies with bad managers. Like, it's kind of logical, by a big amount, but we don't know what to do. And so we talk about leadership principles, like here's how you delegate, or here's how those are good things. They're not bad things, but we never talk about the stuff that's underneath. And that's where you're going to get traction, like big traction, right? I mean, you as soon as I said, like, what if your boss, I said that, you guys like, oh yeah, man, that'd be great. So I think that to us is like one of the things that, like, if we can help people, leaders in particular, kind of emotionally regulate, kind of manage their own crap, kind of figure out, okay, how do I make a paradigm shift emotionally, mentally? Like, that's going to do wonders for everybody working with them. It's going to do wonders for the team. And we've seen that play out. Like, we worked with a team that was in a bit of a chaos, and they had some external things happen that were really beneficial to the team. But in working with the leader, they were really stressed out, a bit chaotic, a lot of sort of changing directions, a lot of micromanaging, right? A lot of, and the team was like,
The team was struggling.
team was frustrated. Like, we don't want to do this anymore. And so over the course of working, we spent some time working with them, and we were able to, kind of do that and help the leader recognize, like, here's what's happening. Like, is that how you really want to operate? And made a shift. And it was huge. And their team kind of made a huge transition as a result of that. They kind of got together, they worked better together, things were working. So it can happen, but just companies don't know how to do it. So
yeah, I think that emotional regulation piece is huge, because a lot of times most leaders don't understand that the employees are at the long end of the whip. If I had a whip, and for us, we have competing priorities, and we will turn on a dime and drop everything we were working on to work on this new shiny thing. But the problem is, we know that the thing that we're working on isn't going to pay dividends. It was just the flavor of the week because of that guy can't regulate his emotions.
Yeah.
And so now we're at the long end of the whip doing whatever that we know is going to go nowhere. We talk about this all the time, is, did they not know that bringing these guys in on a Saturday and making them work 10 hours a day we had a guy en route to Disney with his family. We live in Central Florida, so it's not like, it's like 30 minutes away. So, but still, he had set aside the day to spend with his family, got called in, worked 10 hours. And we knew from the beginning of the phone call that thing they were working on was never going to go anywhere, that the client didn't have the money to pay for it, that it was just an exercise to see if we could do it. And we get so frustrated because we're like, we know where we're at the in these middle rungs where this is going to go, but it still happens. Instead of somebody saying, hey, hold on a minute, do we really need to do this on a Saturday? Can it wait till Monday? Because I'm okay with changing priorities. Just if the team can only hold 5 things, that's all we can hold. But we kind of have a saying, when nothing is a priority, when everything's a priority, nothing is a priority. And so that's just an example of things that is just recent for us that we've been dealing with. So.
It's like most decisions or ideas are based on fear and unknown, as opposed to like taking a solid stance on something. Instead of being like, hey, I'm on the way to Disney, I spent money on these things and I'm with my family, I'm not coming to work, or when somebody calls, like his boss or whoever's boss that was should know, like, A, this is dumb, it's not going to happen, and be able to stand up on the back end of that and be like, oh, sorry, they spent this money, they're going to Disney with his family, like, this is not a, because now you're dragging the kids into it for a job.
Big time.
Yeah, that story, by the way, that's one of those things that's just like that gets under my skin. And the funny thing is I know that I did some of those things because of my own desire to be successful and to please the people above me and to make, because it gets really nuanced when you're in the middle and when you start to reach the upper echelons of management, because sometimes influence in the organization or being able to influence decisions is really the currency. And in order to get the influence, you kind of got to do some things that are tough and challenging. And so there was a really weird balance of, okay, I'm trying to be a person and help my team and recognize, I'm going to let them have their personal lives, and balancing that with, if I get this done ahead of the guy next to me, or if I get this in a little bit sooner, or I do this a little bit, that means I'm going to have the influence. And then the decision that we're all working for on a team is going to have an impact. Whereas if I didn't get it in, or I said, okay, we're just not going to do it, then we lose impact. And so I saw us kind of really swing that back and forth. And that was one of the things I struggled with, because the boss and the guy that I replaced, one of my great mentors, he got more stuff done, but he did that at expense to the team and taking on a broader scope. And the team got really, really tired. Well, I was like, we're not doing any of that. Like, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to protect the team. Well, I lost power in the organization, which ultimately made the work that my team did less. It wasn't less valuable. It just didn't have the impact because I lost the power in the organization. So it was a really weird balance that gets really sort of confusing that I think has to be managed at sort of the micro level, where you're going to say to the person who's on Disney, hey, listen, yeah, you go take care of your family. Let's pick it up on Monday, and I'm going to pick up the slack. You know, the manager needs to be able to do that. And oftentimes, like, they're just not up for doing that, or they just don't know how to do that.
Or they don't want to do it, or they're so far removed they don't have the skills of atrophy, and they can't do it. And that's kind of we're Tyler and I were ultra niche, and there's very few people that if something happened to us, there would be a scramble point at the company, because they just, not that we're awesome, it's just it would take some time to find somebody to do these jobs. So
Jared, what was it that drove you to go that far in that career field? Like, why did you start there, and then how did you what kept pushing you?
That's a mean question, Tyler. That's Stacey's sitting here looking at me going like, oh,
go ahead, Jared. Go answer. Go ahead. That's what she said. That's what my wife would be doing. She'd be doing the same thing.
Ostensibly, like on the surface level, there were perks, there was money, there was, there was sort of the visible signs of success that come along with pushing, and that were like, hey, that's pretty cool. I like that. I think a layer down underneath there, a sense of my own personal self-worth that was tied to the ladder rung. And I felt that I think I could admit that after being 2 years removed from it. Stacey's nodding her head like that's.
I'm impressed.
I think that along the way, I began to tie, and this may be from a very early on, tie my own self-worth to either the accolades associated with level or the visible appearance of level, right? Because think about what the messages that we send out on social media, on media in general. We hear about the success stories of corporate climbing, and we hear about all these things, and they become sort of the goal. And so I went to business school, and I got a degree in business, and no one brings in the middle manager to speak to all of the MBA class. They bring in the CEO that's been successful at doing X, Y, and Z, and starting this company, and so you sort of build into your psyche this. If I'm going to be of any value, I'm going to have to reach this level of this level in the company, or this level. And so that was sort of why I think deep down why I kind of pushed, and why it was ultimately unsustainable. Because when you tie your self-worth to your ladder rung, then you're anchored on the wrong thing, and there's
always another rung.
There's always another rung. There's always, you end up, you talked about fear-based decision making. The higher up you go, I found that my decisions were based on fear of what people would think of me as a leader, as opposed to doing what was right, because my self-value was tied to the ladder rung and tied to what people thought of me, and totally unsustainable. And that's one of the reasons why I flamed out.
That's a real common theme in military and law enforcement, especially even for me, is, they call that work role centrality, where you kind of enmesh your identity as, an executive, or as a pilot or a soldier or whatever it is. And then it's really, really hard when you're not that thing anymore. And that's a big problem with a lot of military folks when they leave. They no longer have their tribe. They no longer have purpose, and then their identity is all wrapped up in that. And we actually deal with that a lot. I mean, I still deal with that a lot.
I think when you sign up for the Army, so I joined, after September 11th. It's like we're going to war. I'm joining to go to war. Like the whole purpose is it's laid out for you. You know what I mean? There's you live long enough, you're going to climb the ladder anyway. But it was never to be like the sergeant major. It was never to be the sergeant major of the Army. It was to go to war. Right. And so now that I'm out and we're doing all these things, I have zero drive. And we'll find out if that's good for me later on in life, to climb any ladders.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't care. Like when I walk into, cause I'm kind of peaked in my profession right now in the corporate world. There's not a lot of use for somebody like me outside of where I'm at now. In this specific career field. So I just can't, and I asked that question earlier about what pushed, because I don't know what it's like to climb inside of a company. I know what it's like to do it in the rank of the military, but I have no idea. And I don't really ever talk to anybody about that.
Yeah. Well, I think you talked about that. I think you mentioned like what it's like getting out, where you're no longer that identity. I can absolutely see that. And I've had to wrestle a little bit with that over the past 2 years, as I've seen, I actually tried to stop following any of the automotive industry because I just needed to kind of step away from that.
I think we kind of do the same. Just because it's like on one hand, you kind of want to throw up in your mouth a little bit because you kind of know it's BS, but on the other hand, you're like, but I want to go play too.
But they're having all the fun, and
why aren't we going to war today? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. And
think about that. So for those who get out, but what about the people who stay in? So think like you still told the story about your boss and the frustration sometimes. Is that boss tied to his identity or her identity? Doesn't really matter at work. And if they are, how is that coloring the decisions in the way that they act? Because guaranteed they're not acting completely in the best interest of the company, because they're going to want to preserve their job because their identity is tied to the job. And so they're going to do things that are going to protect their job. And that, to a lot of the employees, that looks really bad. It's not always the case, but I can see that's actually a problem. So I think that one of the core tenets of leadership is self-possession. Like, you've got to know who you are, what you stand for, independent of your role, independent of the company, so that you can do right by your people, so that you can do right, like, period. And sometimes when your identity is tied to things that are transient, it makes it really tough to do that.
Well, jobs can change. You could you could lose your job, and then what?
Yeah. Then you've got a mental health crisis on top of a financial crisis.
Absolutely.
I also think that, maybe we're talking too much about work, but we run into a thing where, like you said, most people are military, right? So a lot of these people have 2 retirements already. So there's no, like, it is set it and forget it. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm here. I've got a third paycheck coming in. I don't really need to do anything, so I'm going to go ahead and not do that.
Yeah.
So that's frustrating.
That's totally frustrating.
Yeah, I don't know. Eats my brain.
That's a good point, because you have it. The flip side of that, or the effect of that, is a lot of these folks, it becomes their identity. So they'll stay in the office 10, 12 hours a day. And then they have the expectation that you should be doing the same thing. And I like that. And this is kind of a question for Stacey, is what do you think about work-life balance? And is that a real thing? Because I don't know that it's a real thing.
You know what? We gave an entire presentation on how it's not a real thing. So yes, I agree with that. I think maybe a more helpful way to think about it is, have you ever seen one of those performers where they have like like spinning plates. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they have a whole bunch of them. It's probably a little more accurate. Like which element of your life needs a little energy right now to keep it spinning, to keep it going? So if there's a balance, to me, it feels more like that. I don't know if that answers. And I want to know what Jared thinks about that too, because this is a long conversation.
Yeah, we've had this conversation quite a bit. And I think that what Stacey said is actually quite wise in the sense of what areas of your life need the attention and what kind of attention does it need? Sometimes you're in a phase of life where you are trying to get established in a career and you need to kind of put in the effort. Like I think of several instances. A lot of times that can take over and then plates start to drop around and people don't recognize when the plates are dropping, and that's part of the problem. But you gave 100% at work. The challenge is that your 100% at work can't preclude giving 100% to your kids who may need it, right? Who may need some attention, right? And so that becomes the challenge. How do you, instead of work-life balance, it's sort of energy balance and emotional energy balance.
That's good.
Internal.
That's good.
It's
I think people always think of balance as 50-50.
Yeah,
It's never 50-50.
It's never 50-50.
And it shouldn't be 50-50. You definitely shouldn't be giving 50% of your life to work.
No.
And that's my opinion, but
I agree.
Well, I agree with you. And I'll come back to that. Just that idea, Tyler, is I mean, I would come home, I would come home. There were times where I had meetings at like 3 and 4 in the morning because we're working time zones across the world. Right. And I'd come home and be shot for like 3 days just because I would get my sleep schedule out of whack. And, or I'd go on a business trip across the ocean, whether Europe, Japan, or whatever. And I'd come back and I'd be pretty crappy for like a week. And, it's really hard to give the attention where it's really due when you feel crappy, whether that's emotionally or physically. And so, the trick, and it's been a lot of the work that I've done since leaving, and Stacey's really helped me with this, is how do you manage your energy levels? So psychological, emotional, physical, spiritual, like all of how do you manage that in a way that you can show up at your best when you're needed to be your best? And if that means that work needs to take a little bit of hey, I'm not going to work 60 hours this week. I'm going to work 50, and the other 10, I'm going to sleep. For example, I'm not maybe it's the other, so that you can show up. Or maybe the other 10 is, you know what? I'm really going to spend some time playing with my kids, like really focusing on playing with your kids. I'm going to get that plate spinning because I can feel it, So that's kind of I think that whole notion of work-life balance is like, we've got it wrong. Yeah. It's a little off.
I feel like it's a corporate thing somebody made up. It's
virtually.
It's akin to that, those posters that have everybody rowing and it says teamwork at the bottom. I think somebody in HR was like, work-life balance, and they just sold it and everybody bought into it.
Yeah.
And it was just a way to get people to probably produce more.
Well, it's also it's been, I say, exacerbated by the internet and computers at home now. So instead of having a sick day or whatever, say, hey, take your computer home and just do what you can. Be like, you should, that shows me you don't care. Hey, there's a hurricane. You just do what you can in between putting up shutters and sandbagging your house. You just go ahead and knock out what you can for the company.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Here you go. Way to go.
You just went through a hurricane.
Yeah.
That
wasn't specific.
Hopefully did you guys get hit at all from where you guys are?
No, we're on the east coast of Florida, so the west coast. Yeah, the
West Coast.
I lost power for 2 days, and Tyler, you were out for a day and a half, right? Something like that.
No, man, they came back on 6 p.m. same day.
Stop talking.
No, okay. Yeah.
I lost power for 2 days, and
boo-hoo.
Yeah, it was the worst. It's you quickly realize how good we have it. So
well, it's Tyler, it's kind of funny you talk about that, because when COVID happened, it did like, you had these sort of polar opposite reactions. You had people, and I think this is probably the majority, I don't have any hard numbers on it. I'm sure the numbers are out there. I just don't have any top of mind. Who really struggled because work was omnipresent. Mm-hmm. It was always there. You could always turn your computer on. You could always, and so you were working a lot more because it was just there. And then you had other people who were like, this is great. I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go play golf. I did that a couple times. Or I'm going to, or I can go and run groceries, or I can do stuff on my own time. And so it created a better life than what they had before because they could integrate it. So you'll hear the term, instead of work-life balance, you'll hear the term like work-life integration. And work-life integration is where you can sort of kind of mix it all together and make it all happen as you're mixing things all together. And
I think that's where certain companies are getting it right, because they put the trust on the employee instead of sitting there and being like, you need to be in the office at least 9 hours a day and I need to be staring at you. What time did you get here? What time are you leaving? Versus like my wife works for a company. She's worked remote since 2010, right?
Oh, nice.
So when she moved in, she's worked for the same company in DC when she moved down to Georgia. And she's kind of found a few companies since then that she's worked for. And the last two have had unlimited PTO, essentially. It's like, get your work done. And if you need a day, take it.
Wow. Love to meet their upper management.
Right. And it's such a neat like concept. Like, hey, be an adult, do your work. Sometimes you might have to take a late meeting, but the opportunity is there for the individual to go to the grocery store, get those extra, hey, I can move my schedule a little bit because of whatever. If the kid's got something going on, she can manipulate her schedule in a way that works for her. And so it creates, the work-life integration, right?
Yeah.
Or the work-life balance.
Seems more organic. And I mean, we're human
and the work
organisms.
Right. Because really, when you're in the office, how much work actually gets done for the 8 or 9 hours you're in there? 4 hours.
There's a lot of wasted time. There's a lot of wasted time. So I kind of struggled. I admit, I kind of grew up in a pretty traditional family where, dad was, you work when you work and you play when you play. Don't mix the two, And that gave me a great sense of sort of work ethic. The dark side of that is that you can appear to be busy and not actually getting stuff done. But I kind of struggled at times, and we had groups and some of my managers who were like, "Hey, listen, I can't do work. I can't do remote work across the board because I've got a couple employees that'll never get off their machines because they're trying to be good and they're cranking and cranking it. And then I got the other side of the coin that aren't getting crap done and taking advantage of it." So you talked about trust. And I think there's another word that we throw around a lot and we don't really know what it means. We can't explain it in a way where a company can say, okay, here's the rules and this is what it looks like, and then go. And I think that there's a couple of elements of trust in there that again, if we would, and it's all that stuff under the surface, right? You got to be able to let go. You can't always be the one in charge. If we could explain that a little bit more clearly, then we'd probably be a little bit more flexible and reduce some of the fear of letting people go off and actually do the things that they know they can do. So.
I think that comes down to accountability.
Yes, absolutely.
And HR is like a roadblock to accountability. Like you cannot hold people accountable for fear of them getting upset and suing the company because, hey, you didn't do good and you haven't been doing good. It's time for you to go find another job, which it seems like that's impossible to do.
Yeah, we run up against often people, just do your job. That's all I'm asking you to do, just do your job. And my whole thing on that is I always say at work, we got to shoot a hostage every now and again. You got to shoot a hostage so they know you're mean business. And you should see the executives look at me like they're like, what are you saying? And I was like, look, if this guy isn't doing his job, we gotta let him go. And every now and again, you got to make a public execution. I don't mean like be belligerent and rude to the guy, but what we do, and I was curious to see how what the psychological effects might be and see if you, Jared, to see if you've had this experience, and then Stacey, if you've ever dealt with this before, but where you have an employee that doesn't actually contribute anything or they don't do anything. And so what will happen is there'll be these high performers, and they will take that workload off the guy that doesn't do anything, and they shift it to these high performers. And the high performers just take it on and pack mule it. And then, but what happens is they're making the same amount of money as this other person, but their mental health is getting completely bogged down. They feel like they're not valued, because they're just getting all this stuff. But kind of back to what you were saying, at some level though, there's this, they picked me to carry the load because I'm the savior of, whatever. What happens is that's enough to sustain you, where you want to, you're just going to take it, but then you find it, you get to a point where
it's unsustainable,
where you can't take it. It's not sustainable. And then you get angry. And so this is a two-part question. The first part's for Stacey. Do you guys deal with that scenario in the Kintsugi Institute from a standpoint of, do you do therapy with people, like for those high performers, like, hey, these are some tools and tips you can do, or these how you set boundaries? So that's the first part. And the second part for Jared will be, did you see that as an executive, and did you ever do that?
I really appreciate you bringing that up, because yes, that I'm picturing those two people, the underperformer, the overperformer. I'm going to see the overperformer in my office, right? That's who is, you're just like you said, is struggling with the mental health impact of this. And this is why being a marriage and family therapist can be really helpful in the corporate space, is because we are trained systemic thinkers. So I'm going, oh man, you're just burned out. You're experiencing all this stuff. You're such a high performer. You've got all these beliefs about, how you need to show up and how you need to help others. And well, let's look at the entire context and let's tell me about each of these players, right? And then as we kind of explore this little system, they start to recognize how they are impacting the current homeostasis of what's going on. They think that the problem is just that guy who's underperforming. But in a way, I'm excited to empower that person to say, well, actually, you have a part in this too, which is that you are taking up the slack. And just like you alluded to at the end, boundaries are super important with that. But there's also this inner work that has to be done with this individual. Where did some of these beliefs come from? What's going to happen? We have to actually do this processing, and everybody takes different, amount of time and has different stuff that comes up. What are these inner beliefs that you have if you aren't going to pick up the slack? And we have to really reconstruct internally what it means to be a part of a system, to be a team player, to be, a contributor, one who takes responsibility, but who is also like, yeah, that was not for me. I'm not taking that. I'm so sorry about the impact. So that's work. Yes, we deal with that.
Yeah, it's hard to tell people no.
Fail.
Yeah.
I think it's important to watch people fail.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, there's an important piece of that, of setting boundaries, but not being belligerent about it, or having, I don't want to say ethical is the right word, but just you have to figure out a way to say firmly, hey, this is out of bounds. I like working, but can we do that during work hours? Can we do that from, I'm happy to help you, but it needs to be between the hours of 9 and 5, or,
Sure.
Or there's some of that fault lies with the manager. And that's why I was interested in your perspective, Jared, is because you're under the pressure to get it done no matter what. And that means, hey, you've got high performing guy, let's call him Steven over here. He's a high performer. and you got another guy that let's call him Chris, that's not a high performer. It doesn't matter to you because you've got to get the job done. So you're just going to task the high performer to get after it. Did you ever come across that? And how did you deal with that?
Oh yeah. Well, any company is going to come across that. I mean, that's just the way it is. There's the law of averages. You're going to have good and you're going to have bad. So you're obviously going to, the real trick is what do you do about it. Right. And so, yeah, I came across that, and it created some really challenging situations for us as managers. And I'll use the term nice versus kind. We get that really mixed up a lot. And so sometimes managers, I was one of them, I'll admit, I wanted to be a nice guy.
Every high performer has this. Everybody who goes up in the ranks, they tend to have this, I want to be nice.
They want to be a nice guy. I want people to like me so that they want to work for me. And so there's niceness, whereas kindness is doing the right thing by people. And sometimes doing the right
is clarity.
Kindness is clarity.
Yeah.
That's a great way. That's a great way to put it. Kindness is clarity. So, I struggled when I saw people that had their own personal challenges, their own personal lives, they needed the jobs that weren't very good or that weren't performing. Like, what do you do? Like, part of my heart was like, I want to help them. I want to keep nurturing them. I want to see if they can do it. I want to keep working with them. And that was sort of my niceness. And then there were other times where I was like, okay, that person is causing a problem for everybody in the group, and everybody in the group is being taxed, and it's setting a really bad culture of permissiveness in the group where we're going to tolerate mediocrity. So that's toxic. That's infectious. That's going to work to everybody else. We've got to get this out. And so there were times where we did work with our HR counterparts who were really good about saying, okay, here's the steps you need to take. We support you. We called it performance management. Let's make sure that it's really clear what needs to happen. And if they can't get that done, then let's help them find a different place where they're going to be more effective. So we had to do that on a couple of different occasions. Never comfortable.
It's never comfortable, especially for a person who is more prone to achievement and, to growth and to taking responsibility, or maybe even being the performer. What is that transition like for that person to go from just nice, make people feel comfortable, to kind, which is, hey, I got to be really direct with you, and to not overshoot that to being a jerk and being somebody nobody wants to work for, right? Yeah. And so I have a favorite little way of describing this called the velvet hammer. And I actually got this from an elderly friend, but you can find a way. There's always a way. I am a firm believer that there is a way to be direct, hammer, but in a nice way. Like, hey, this is just going to be the impact. I want the best for you, but I also want the best for everybody around you. So hammer, this is what you got to do.
Yeah, I always try to go with the idea, like I had my own little phrase, it was fair and impartial, right? Mm-hmm. So as long as I treat everybody exactly the same, regardless of who they are, where they come from, even if they're my best friend. I've had to fire people in the Army. We were lucky enough to be able to kick people out of our unit that, like, hey, you're not meeting the standard. You're going home. You're not a bad dude, but you're not going to be a good dude here.
Yeah.
So fair and impartial was always something I tried to impart, and like the decisions I made throughout the day.
That's a really, I like that approach as well. I mean, that's really pragmatic. And what you said is really important. You're not meeting the standard. A lot of times companies can't articulate clearly what standard looks like, what a good standard looks like. And so that allows for anything and everything. And when you can't say, like, here's this very specifically what you're doing wrong, then people are going to be like, well, why are you firing me? Like I do what they do or whatever. So setting a really clear standard, and it's up to the leaders to say, this is the expectation, and here's the consequence if you're not meeting the expectations. Once you set that bar, and I think it's really clear. I've seen the documentaries on some of that kind of stuff, particularly in the military, where, hey, you're just not cutting it. And when you're not cutting it to the standard, then you put everybody else at risk, and we can't tolerate that. So I think that, that's incumbent upon leaders to be able to articulate really clearly what the standards are. And then the kind thing to do for everybody involved is to be fair and impartial to the standard, like you said.
You described that, and I'm like, that's great leadership.
Yeah, we actually, that's our job, is standardization. And we are air crew, and we work on helicopters, and our job is to standardize all the air crew systems and processes. Not because they all look the same and they act the same, is because in an emergency situation, it's just lockstep. And we struggle a lot with our support counterparts because, or even guys on our own team, because when we're talking about the actual vocation of doing the job, hey, we have a task. It's whatever, this thing. We have conditions. You're going to have, given these, these are the conditions that you're going to employ this thing at. And then these are the standards. And they're very clear in they're black and white, and they're written out. a lot of the issue that we have is the kind of, we have specified task and implied task. And there's we struggle a lot with implied task where we know, okay, clearly anybody with a brain would have thought A plus B equals C, but you went and those habitual line steppers that can't, I'll call it like critical think about things. We struggle with how do you standardize that? Like, just like you said, like, well, hey, you're not doing good. Well, what did I mess up on? Well, it's very difficult to quantify.
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
Your brain doesn't, you're not well suited to do, you don't have enough RAM to do what we're asking you to do.
Your brain is bad. I'm pretty sure. It's faulty.
Yeah. And
it's a great way to say it.
You got a bad brain.
And what happens is, like what you said, is you get, like, at least for me, is that moment that you try to, you try to go from nice guy to kindness. It's, for me, it's been like a switch. I beat my head against the wall to try to lead the horse to the water, and it's not happening. Then I have to just be very clear and direct and to the point. And then people think that you're out to get them, which there's a little bit of truth to that. I mean, look, I'm kind of coming for you, but that's been a struggle that I've had personally. Is you just get to the point where you're fed up, and I don't know what you would call it in the civilian world or commercial space, but you just become, for a military term, is combat ineffective. Like, I'm not moving the needle here because I'm so angry at certain individuals on the team for not, and I can't really explain to you that your mama didn't raise you well, and these are, normal things. I'm kidding a little bit, but kind of not.
Not really.
Not really. Yeah.
Because there are and I'm sure you've seen it as an executive, I'm sure you see it as a therapist, is like some of the stuff that people do. I mean, we had a new hire. This is a true story.
Oh, no.
This has happened. A guy was blown away that we asked him to, like, come to work on a Friday, or, like, we had a new guy, his second day on the job, wanted to change everything, and was like, well, we need to call it this, and we should make this do, this.
And
book
by
should
second day, he's still in processing.
He's still on board.
Hasn't even
seen
the job yet.
Yeah, hasn't been, and we're like, where do these people come from? Like, what? At a minimum, just shut your mouth until you've got a lay of the land, and then critique. And I'm a big fan of critiques. If you have a better way to do something, I want to hear about it. I just don't need to hear about when it's time sensitive and we're trying to walk out the door on a project, or that's not the time to raise your hand and sharpshoot everything. The time to do that is when we have plenty of time. So anyways, I just think it's always been a sticking point with me of how, my version of how I was raised, and the standards and morals and values. And in the military, you're those are kind of shepherded for you. They're very, there's guardrails, and you have to
These
operate.
are your values now.
These are your values. These are where you're going to operate. And then when you get in the real world, it turns out most people don't operate like that. Shocker. Like, I was blown away that the things that I would see, or, people would ask for, hey, they started been here a week, and they're like, hey, I need to take 2 weeks off. Oh, okay, cool. Is there an emergency? No, I've just got to go. My kids got spring break, and I'm going to go on vacation for 2 weeks. But you've been here 3 days. Like, wait, what?
Why not start 2 weeks later?
Yeah. And I'm not, again, kind of going back to what you're saying is, or what Tyler's talking about, the unlimited PTO. I'm a big fan of just, when we were doing the hybrid thing, when we were during COVID, I got so much stuff done because I could work, I might work from 9 to 11 and then do some stuff, and then log back on at 7 and work 7 to 9. And I didn't have the drive-bys where people would come and do the office small talk. And, so if you're in a vocation that allows you to work remote, I think it's actually probably generally speaking, good for the employee and good for the company. Obviously, if you're a lineman and you work, in electricity, you can't. There's certain jobs that's just not possible. But so, what do you guys think about being from your experience in Nissan? Was there a kind of an unwritten rule that you always had to be available as a senior executive, or was that, if you, because I'll get emails on my phone and I forget to put it on sleep mode, and then somebody will email me at 2 a.m, and then at 8:05 when I get into work, they're like, "Hey, I emailed you. I didn't hear back from you." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it's 5 after 8. You're like, when did you email it?" "Well, I emailed it last night." And I'm like, you emailed it 6 hours ago. So was there an expectation for you as an executive to always be available?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, there was always a sense of urgency that I needed to pay attention to. And I had 2 phones. I had my personal phone and I had a work phone. I carried both phones with me all the time. And working sort of around the clock, I'd get emails from Japan, for example, and then I'd have to be aware of those. And but no one was so hard over on like, "Hey, I emailed you at 2 a.m. and I expected a response by 6 a.m. or I expected," like, there was a little bit of we carried some of our culture from Japan. And a lot of it from Japan, because we were working with counterparts, and there's some very redeeming qualities about the dedication to work that we experienced there. And there's a flip side of it as well. But they held their weekends pretty sacred in Japan, because they gave themselves up for the whole week to the company. Like, the company owns you for the week, but on the weekends, so it was very rare that over the weekend I would get emails and that sort of thing. But I had 2 phones that I was constantly looking at. And there was like, I talked a little bit about earlier about influence and power, and that the power dynamics in a company. I had to be conscientious of that. And if I was like, an email went out to 5 of my colleagues and they all got to the response before I did, then all good intentions aside, I look like the short end of the stick here. I look like the laggard on it. And so I had to be careful of that. And that was challenging. So,
yeah, I think we actually just had this conversation. Have you guys ever seen the movie Hot Fuzz? Have you ever seen that? It's
I know it.
Simon Pegg movie. Tyler just sent out a meme the other day at work, because
the greater good.
Yeah, and in the do you want to tee up what this meme was about? Or I don't remember what it was about. It was somebody that was maybe that they put in like 12 to 14 hours every day.
Let me see if I can find it.
And essentially somehow it came up about them making everybody look bad because they were working so much.
So hard. Yeah.
And in that movie, they end up firing.
I was thinking about the greater good, but not the greater good. You're making us look bad, so we're kicking you out of the company essentially, because you're making us all. Your arrest record is so good that we can't afford to keep you on the police force anymore.
Yeah, he was like a London, whatever city of London cop, and in the movie he gets put out to the country because he's arresting. Good. So he's arresting so many people. Good. They all look bad, and what does that do for Stacey when somebody's kind of always switched on and they're not being present in the moment? What does that do? I think you have a unique perspective because you were married to a vice president at a large corporation. What's the perspective from a partner and a spouse and a wife and a mom that when folks are always switched on, what's that doing to the spouse, and then what's that doing for their like cortisol levels or their emotional well-being? Because I'm pretty sure I have a problem with cortisol. I'm fairly sure.
Trust yourself, and that's worth deep diving on. The impact is definite. Like, it's definitely there. Like, the more like connected to work that Jared was, especially when things were tougher, especially with certain personalities and individuals. And he couldn't shut it off. Even if he wasn't like attached to email or text or anything, it became so much a part of his psyche at some point that it felt, and this is, we've talked about this before, so I'm just going to say it. Mm-hmm. It felt, and I called him out on this toward the end of the time there. Hey, it feels like your boss is in here. Like, I don't want this other person in our room or in our kitchen or on our vacation. Like, don't invite him. Like, it felt like personal at a certain point. So I feel like there was like a lot of tolerance, but then as that became more just ingrained in his every second, like I felt encroached upon personally. Do you know what I mean? Cortisol was a really big problem. Jared's pallor was gray 2 years ago. He did not look okay. It's kind of entertaining, but also sad to run into people that he used to work with. And they said, Jared, you just look so great. And I'm like, it's because he's not there. So it's super important to be able to disconnect. And this may actually be the balance thing. If there's a good version of balance, it's how do you feel balanced? If you're feeling cortisol, that's a bad hormone. You do not need that as a predominant thing in your body. So we have got to rebalance that in some way or another, if that's your experience, right? So there's this ability, I think the pronunciation is interoception. This is just a person's ability to be aware of what's happening inside of them, both physiologically and emotionally. And people who are really busy, stressed, whatever, but also if there's trauma of any kind, people really struggle with this self-awareness on the inside, physically or emotionally. If you cannot do that, if you are so engrossed with trauma or with your boss and his needs and his demands, you're not a balanced human being. You're only going to be experiencing cortisol. You're not going to be okay. You're on a path to a heart attack. You're on a path to a mental break. It's just what it is. Working with one of our more recent clients, the one Jared referenced before, one of I guess we could cite a lot of things that were helpful and impactful for her and really life-changing. But one thing that I observed was really significant is that she took a lot of effort to slow down physically, so that and then to take steps to do what we call bottom-up regulation. So top-down regulation stuff, I have a little cheat sheet here, is like stuff like talking. It's like talk therapy. It's meditation. It's anything that has to do with like your prefrontal cortex, cognitive stuff, right? So intention setting, thinking, planning, goal setting, those are all very top-down ways to manage yourself. And as a culture, I think we're kind of good at those. We do a lot of those. We talk about those a lot. Those are a lot of the solutions on LinkedIn or whatever. But bottom up is a little different. This is like, what did you eat today? What did you eat yesterday? How much sleep have you had? How much water have you had? What's your posture like in this moment? What kind of movement have you had lately? If you're in a moment of stress, can you change your physiological state somehow? Are you warm? Open up the freezer. Are you experiencing hardcore anxiety? Go hold an ice cube. Like, change something. Maybe it's audio. Maybe you need some music going. So to be able to intentionally start doing some of these bottom-up, like self-management skills, increases your level of interoception, where you can be aware of what's going on in your body in any given moment, but the physiological allows your awareness of the emotional. So this person that I'm referencing, she took very seriously our encouragement to do this kind of thing. So she made a very rigorous, and like, she was dogged with her schedule. Unless there was something major, she was going to do yoga. She was going to take a walk a day. She was going to spend time reading with her kids at night. And her doggedness and determination around those more bottom-up kind of regulation skills absolutely set the stage for her to level up as a manager, to help reset the dynamic of her entire team. Like, they liked each other to the point of like little happy tears when we left them. Like, it was like a totally different situation. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's just a really important piece, is that self-awareness. And I guess we
It's
could
like
talk about
organizing.
trauma too, but that might be another chat.
Yeah, we got time. That's like organizing your closet or your bedroom, right? Like you got to keep your stuff clean so you can find out where everything is.
Yeah.
And so
So
doing
true.
that, eating right and exercising and doing all these other little things helps you stay organized. So when you're outward facing and you're doing all the other stuff, you know, everything else is taken care of. You know where to find everything. You know where all the tools are. You know what you need to do and when you need to do it because everything's organized. But if you're constantly a mess, then you're no good to anybody.
I like that comparison a lot. Like, who knows the feeling of my attic is an absolute chaotic mess, but nobody can see that. But I know that, and it somehow is impacting you internally.
Right, like a garage.
The garage and my attic and my all this.
Right. Well,
and
it's
all that.
It's physical, but it's mental.
It manifests itself.
Yeah, like piles. We have piles because I live with ADHDers, and we get piles of. You can see where they were like, "Oh, we need to clean this up, and we're going to stack it here."
Yeah,
and then shiny thing, and then they're over. And I'm pretty sure I have undiagnosed ADHD, which I think probably in some settings, and I bet in the corporate world, it's kind of a superpower. At least for being a pilot, it's a superpower because I've got to fly the helicopter with both hands and both feet, and I've got to listen to seven different radios.
Awesome.
That
Perfect.
that dopamine hits way clear. Or my wife's like, "How do you stay so calm in emergency situations?" And I'm like, I feel like my best when it's complete chaos is like, you ever seen that? Tyler, you've seen this, the British guy, I think it's in, Pirates of the Caribbean, and he's walking down the steps like nice and calmly, and it's in the middle of a battle, and the
things are
stuff's
blowing
all
up
flying.
everywhere.
Like, that's how I feel every time I'm in like a stressful situation. But was there any of that as were you saying that you do that stuff, Stacey, or
oh yeah, like me personally, 100% ADHD. Yeah.
So my wife is she's so ADHD that I feel like that should be a joke, like your mama jokes, but
your mama is so ADHD.
she has to have. I've learned this is everything has to be in view for her. If she can't see it, it doesn't exist.
That's a known thing. Yeah.
She buys, like, we went to Costco yesterday, and she buys the same thing, and like she bought these long sleeve shirts that go under her scrubs. And I'm like, you just bought those on TikTok Shop. She's like, are you sure? And I'm like, I'm 100,000,000% positive. And then she bought them anyway. And then we were doing the laundry, and I'm like, there's 6 sets of these, and you just bought 2 more, or
that's like condiments and spices in our house.
Yeah.
Like,
Those are the worst.
Why'd you get more? You could have looked.
Could have looked, but I was at the store.
Yeah. I think we need it. Well, you got it last time.
We're really going to switch to a counter depth refrigerator because my son, my middle daughter, and my wife all have ADHD, and the deep refrigerators, they can't see. Like, I'm like, the kimchi, it's back right corner, past the butter, to the left of the mustard. They see front row. That's it.
I know.
And
right.
Front row, one shelf.
Yeah, exactly. One shelf. It's got to be eye level. Anything outside of eye level doesn't exist.
100%. 100%. And time is the same way for the ADHD brain. It's now or not now. So, but honestly, as you were describing kind of your wife's work situation, I'm going, that would work for me, because when it's now or not now, right? If my brain is on now, you just watch out. I will get everything done. Like, I can get it all. I can get the whole week's work done in a couple hours. But otherwise, I need to just go rest and chill and do nothing.
Yeah. And if you think about the time you're driving to work in the morning, is usually would be your most productive time. Anyway, you got up and, usually maybe you did your workout or whatever, but you've set your attention. Nobody has ruined your day yet. And so usually before you even get to your desk, somebody drops something dumb in your lap and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm at work. It took me 45 minutes to get here.
Yeah.
How would you, sorry, go ahead, Jared.
No, go ahead. You had it. I
just had a question for you guys, and maybe you deal with this at the Kintsugi Institute. And I want to talk about the Kintsugi Institute here in a second.
Sure.
But I wonder, do you guys ever deal or teach techniques for, like Tyler just said, somebody ruined his day? And I feel like my day gets ruined like 6 or 7 times in a row every day. And do you guys work with folks that come in and say, hey, how do I, because I'll shoot off into space over from a distance, something insignificant that really doesn't matter. But to me, I'm like, it kind of matters. So do you guys have any techniques for how to deal with that, or do you teach that? Or
This is absolutely part of what we teach. And yes, this is my wheelhouse, but I want to hear what sticks in Jared's mind coming from that corporate perspective. What of all the stuff we've shared and talked about in terms of like what works?
So it's easy to talk about some of these things. And there's a lot of resources out there, and that's what we do. We collect a lot of the resources in Stacey's practice and that sort of thing. It's a very different thing to put them into practice. It requires significant work to put them into practice. There are a couple principles that undergird some of the techniques that when we teach the principles, then can teach the techniques, it tends to be more effective. The first is, you'll hear it when we talk about emotional intelligence, it's called the amygdala hijack. It's where the emotion takes over the logic brain. And you hear the word, I got triggered, or like, Dad, you talk about going into orbit, right?
This is me every single day, every 6 times a day.
That means that the emotion takes over. And takes over the logic brain and the thinking part of our brain, which logically you can say like, well, it's really not that big a deal logically, but the emotion takes over. And that happens a lot when certain things get triggered. So the trick in some of that is to begin to recognize when the emotions are taking over and do things to interrupt the cycle. And there are little things that you can do to get yourself out of the emotional state. And Stacey talks about emotional regulation, but just a couple of things. So one of the things you can do, we would call sort of micro meditations. And I'm not talking about sitting there, for 15 minutes. I'm talking, do something with your physical body that's going to distract your emotions. So whether it's, okay, I'm going to take 15 seconds and I'm going to feel all of the ridges on my fingertips. I'm just going to rub them together.
Make my attention stay there.
And I'm just going to focus my attention solely on that for a certain amount of time. If you can do it longer, great. If you got 2 minutes, and that's all you're thinking about. And when the intrusive thought is, I can't believe so-and-so did this, that's the dumbest thing, and you let it go. You don't think about it, and you're going to focus only on that. And what you're actually doing physiologically is taking the thought processes out of your sort of emotional part of your brain and putting them into the thinking part of your brain. You're shifting that. And then you watch your physiological state. The cortisol comes down. Like you can start to think rationally. So interrupting it that way. Breathing is actually really powerful. There's a couple of fantastic podcasts that talk about breathing in particular. So one of the things we talk about is called box breathing, and you've probably heard of it, Tyler. I see you nodding your head. So breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and hold it for 4 seconds, and do that in cycle, concentrating solely on your breath, and that again changes the physiological state out of the emotional part of your brain into where you can start to think. So you're diverting it. So we call it notice, divert, and convert. That's the mantra we would tell people. Notice when you're getting spiked. Notice when you start to go to orbit. Divert that into something physical that's going to get you out of the emotional state. And there's a lot of different things you can do. And then convert that into a more positive thought. So in this case, it's going to be just randomly, man, I'm really glad for the paycheck on this job. I mean, that's something super simple. Like it could be like, or you know what? I got to work without hitting a traffic jam today. I'm really glad about that. And what you're doing is you're taking the negative pathway, which is like when we walk these pathways neurologically, they get easier to walk. And so we get wagon tracks in our brains at the pathways we take. And so we hear something, bam, we're down that path. Well, you notice it. That's key. You divert out of that pathway and you convert it to a positive pathway. And those techniques, they're like, people will be like, oh, that's total mamby-pamby stuff. That's really fluffy. but it's not. It's
neuroscience.
physiological, it's neuroscience, and it works. That if you can do some of those things, then you can get out of it, and start to be more productive. And so like that, try that. Next time something really triggers you, notice that it triggers you, divert away from that emotion by calling it out. Hey, number one, I'm going to call it out. I'm going to label it. Hey, I'm getting really angry, more angry, like I'm really annoyed. And then say, okay, I'm going to focus on the sounds of the office for 30 seconds. And I'm just going to listen to the sounds of the office. That's all I'm going to hear. And any thought that comes out is going to go away. And then I'm going to pick something positive to go to next. And what you're doing is you're rewriting the neural pathways and giving them a different trajectory. And try that and see if that works. Once you can do that, then have a conversation with your wife, or if there's or Tyler, and say, you know what, I get really triggered by this. Like, why am I so triggered by this? Then you can, like, once you're kind of out of that really heightened state, then you can start to go underneath and say, okay, can I remove that trigger from me? Is there a way can I even recognize what that is? Maybe there was something that really drove me nuts about something in the past that's, whatever it is. I don't know. That honestly, that could be a result of trauma, at which point, yeah, you really need to find somebody who can process the trauma with you so that trigger gets removed.
Yeah. EMDR is one of my favorite trauma processing modalities. That's a great one. And I love the description Jared gave you. I have two other little short things that are helpful. One is just a phrase, and this is a whole other, it could be an entire book, but the phrase is, discomfort is data. I'm feeling discomfort. I have to shift my brain into what are all the various versions of data that I could take from this. That's one. And the other comes from actually my first career, which was music. I would get up to perform or to sing or whatever. And I'm also a huge feeler. And if I'm singing something that's more emotional or I'm really expressing, it's antithetical to singing to cry for me. I know some singers can do it. I can't do it. So if the emotion takes over, the singing stops, and that's not good for performing, right? And so I have had to learn some self-management techniques to which I can do kind of layer on to the process of singing and emoting, right? My favorite one is, you will never notice, but my hands, if they're down on my legs or if I have a podium or something, I am drawing the alphabet with my fingertips while I am singing. That brings me out of that midbrain up to the prefrontal where I can have a little more access to my logic. Do you see what I mean? So this is a great thing in the moment. Let's say we have latent trauma. Let's say we have a jerk boss, terrible traffic, bad day. We're feeling maybe some of our shame got triggered. And you come home and your kids are not being good kids today. They're just being wild or crazy or demanding or entitled or whatever they may be on any given night, right? And you have got to interact in a way that you feel, well, you would like to anyway, right? That you would feel good about at night. Going to bed, you want to be able to be like, I had a bad day, but I treated my family well. Wouldn't that be nice? We can't say that we've always done that well, right? Just bring out one of these little tools, one of these little things. So come here, Jimmy, talk to me. And then just as he's just whining and telling you about what a crappy sister he has or whatever, you're drawing the alphabet with your fingertips and you're like, okay, I can do this. It's like drawing you out of that emotional response.
They're super simple, and they actually, as we're saying them, I can realize that it doesn't sound like they're super effective, but they really are. We would hear a response that, like, from some of the people we've worked with, I'm in the meeting and I'm sitting there tracing the alphabet, and to hold my tongue and not to say something stupid, and tracing the alphabet, and I got through the meeting, as opposed to, I told them what for because I got triggered, and so just enough to get you out of the emotional response is going to help take the edge off. And those are things that we would, a lot of this emanated from Stacey, but those are things that we'll practically do when we go in and say, okay, here's the principle. Here's things you can try. No, go try it and register it before and after and just see what it does. And if one of them's not working, try something else. And there are a ton of things that you can try to do. And then if you can undergird all of that with what we call BPSS, Stacey talked about balance. Tyler, you were talking about sort of this notion of internal balance. BPSS, bio, psycho, social, spiritual.
So like the 4 domains I check in on with all my clients.
Yeah. When you're missing one of those is really off, it's going to be hard to operate at peak performance.
Can you go through those again real quick one more time? What were they?
BPSS is biological, and then P is psychological, and then the first S is social, and the last one is spiritual. So spiritual being whatever spiritual means to you, but biological, check in. How am I doing on all those things? Psychological, what kinds of thoughts am I having? Is there some preferred thoughts that I could create some new neural pathways with? Sometimes we just have to practice our preferred thoughts, to be honest. That's part of that mental fitness piece Jared was talking about earlier. If you want to be a person who is mentally fit and able to really self-manage in tough moments, can you draw up your more positive thoughts on demand? Can you draw up, even better, associated physiological state along with that preferred thought? I mean, this is work, right? It's personal work, but also, especially if there's been, PTSD, if you've gone through stuff, just give that what it's due. It's real, and it's an actual physiological change in your brain when you've got PTSD going on or other trauma. So go manage that with a therapist, okay? And then, I'll come to those too, but I also want to just make sure we talk about some resources for people who may be struggling. You guys may offer that at times, but that's, as a therapist, that's important to me. But then the social, we're human. We're built for connection. What's your social experience like? Sometimes people get a social edification out of work. Sometimes that's the opposite. So what is it, as you check in on that domain, ask yourself, what would help this domain improve? What is it that I actually need? I haven't seen so-and-so in a while. I'm going to call them up. It may be that. Maybe spending time with family or going to see your mom or calling somebody. And then spiritual, like I said, it can be different for everyone. For me, that looks like going to church. For me, that looks like getting into scripture. Other people, it may be yoga, it may be nature. It's truly whatever, that means to you. But those are those main 4 domains, BPSS.
And I feel like all those things kind of get somewhat tossed to the wayside from your 20s to your 40s, right? Where you're grinding it out to make like, hey, I'm putting my head down, I'm climbing the ladder, you know what I mean? Or we're going off and doing our thing over here. And then, you finally come up for air on the backside of that. And you're like, wait a minute.
And your kids are 21 and 19.
Right. And those wagon ruts.
The best part of their life.
Right. And those wagon ruts.
Asking for a friend.
Yeah. Nothing specific. Turn out to be somewhat negative, right? And so you have to, smooth over those things. And I think the biggest thing is that, at least I'm learning it now, come to find out over these last couple of years, is that the inner dialogue is probably one of the most important things. It's had the biggest impact on my life in the most negative way. Yeah. And that's one of those things that, I continually try to work on and remind myself like, oh, I can change the way I feel about myself. I don't have to feel like this. Actually, I'm choosing to feel this way. I'm choosing to say these things. Like this is all, it doesn't have to be like this.
Let's go high level on that for a minute. Our thoughts are physiological little indents, like Jared talked about the wagon tracks. You could see those in real time on a brain, right? So create new ones.
I think Tyler, what you talked about is really important to recognize. We're not very good as a culture at talking about self-awareness and being self-aware. So when we lived in Japan, we lived there for just a couple of years. We were always sort of shocked at how out in public, everyone was incredibly self-aware. Not only did they dress differently than we do in the States, they were always sort of dressed up, but they were aware of their impact on the people around them. And they were very conscious to manage that. And so everyone stood in lines because if you didn't, you impacted other people. And no, it got too extreme. Like if it was on the menu, that was the way it was going to be. And that was the only thing. But they had this idea of sort of self-awareness, and we kind of don't have that same sort of self-awareness in the States. Socially, we don't. But you talked about 20 to 40. The messages we're getting in that time frame is grind, hustle, fight, go, win. And if you're not, then you're not worth anything to society. Like, you got to go. And there's a martyr complex. You got to go and you got to do. And so we subconsciously create those things in our mind, and we're unaware that they're there until we get into a situation where we're like, Dad, you talked about, or Charlie, you start to realize, and I don't know how that happens when you start to realize, oftentimes it takes a third person, a good friend, a significant other. Sometimes it's a good boss that's like, hey, dude, you got to really fix this, where you can become self-aware of some of these things. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges is, how do we become more self-aware as individuals with the things that we're doing? And Stacey talked about a couple of things, but that's a big piece of it, is just being self-aware. And Tyler, you're right. Once you're aware of it, I can start to write new narratives for myself. And that has a huge impact, massive impact. And it takes work to do that.
So let's kind of take all that and point it at what the work you guys are doing. So you guys have the Kintsugi Institute, and then healing is golden is the therapy kind of wing to that. But you guys kind of merge these two in a lot of these modalities, maybe isn't the right word, but we talked about earlier before we were recording that you guys lived in Japan for 2 years, and that was the nexus for the name Kintsugi. And can you just share what that means? And because it's kind of a beautiful thing if you really think about it, how what that means and what all that and how it came to pass.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful thing to learn about living there in Japan. The Kintsugi basically means that something is basically more beautiful for having been broken. They put it back together. Think of a piece of pottery. I feel like everybody's probably seen that. It breaks, you glue it back together, and then you highlight the break with gold, rendering the object more beautiful for having been broken. So on the one hand, I don't like to think of people as broken, but we feel that way sometimes, don't we? We kind of feel that way. We feel cracks coming out, right? The cracks let the light in. Have you guys ever heard that saying? So that's kind of where the name came from. And then just the segue from the idea of Kintsugi being, the thing more beautiful for having been broken, is that healing is golden. I may have cracks, but I'm going to highlight them. I'm going to wear them loud and proud. So that's where that came from.
And we kind of use that as the basis because it invokes not only a very powerful metaphor, but it's a softer approach to the corporate world. Like, there are a lot of people out there doing great work that are business consultants and coaching consultants and leadership consultants, and they do a lot of fantastic work. And we purposely went a little bit in a different direction to be softer, because we felt the corporate world needed a little bit more humanity and a little bit more of acknowledgement and vulnerability around, man, there's some stuff that's bad, it's broken, and it's okay if we can fix it, and we can fix it. And so we purposely highlighted that, and we wanted to. We're very careful because there's a lot of legal ramifications for doing therapy. It's a regulated industry. There's licensure involved, and so we have to be very conscious that when we go into a corporation, that we can take principles of therapy. They're out there. It's not a secret art. We can take principles of therapy and say, here's the principle of therapy and how it can apply, but we don't do the therapy. Like, we're not going to go into people's past, and we're not going to do EMDR and we're not going to do group therapy where we're really diving deep. We're going to say, here's the principle and here's how you can apply it. Here's how it's effective in the business world. And then if someone really needs some extra help, which is totally normal, totally okay, we're going to say, all right, this is not a coaching exercise. Stacey's going to talk to you as a therapist. And then there's the associated disclosures, HIPAA work, and all that kind of stuff that allows Stacey to operate as a therapist with licensure and so forth. And so that's how we've kind of married the business. And we're always trying to bring the principles that are sound psychological principles into the work, because again, that's the stuff underneath where most people really need the work, and businesses can benefit from it. And one of the dreams that we have is that we can actually do therapy, with disclosures to some of the individuals at the top of the company, to help with help manage the stress, help manage the decisions, help all that kind of stuff. And if you can help them, hopefully you're going to help the rest of the company.
Yeah.
So
providing, business informed therapy and therapy informed business stuff.
Yeah.
Have you guys been able to make any inroads with any corporations about kind of championing that kind of emotional well-being in a corporate setting? You talked about a little bit starting at the top, and I think it would be important to eventually get everybody access. I mean, I know that's expensive, but if you could argue so is medical insurance, or, you know what I mean? So, have you been able to make any inroads with corporations, or I mean, it's only 2 years out of the gate. So what's that looking like for you guys?
When we talk about the concepts we're working on, there's a lot of positive response, but that has yet to materialize in real clear inroads.
Everybody likes the idea. Everybody wishes their boss would implement this kind of thing, but it's still a big work for us to do that infiltration, so to speak.
There's a certain measure of marketing, candidly, that has to, a messaging that has to accompany it, and that is not one of my fortes to just begin, to be honest. So we're working to figure out what's the right way to speak and to find the voices that are going to hear it properly. And we're a small team, and a lot of companies, unless you've got a big brand name next to you, are going to say we don't want to work with you. But the companies we have worked with have had real positive results and positive response, and appreciated a different approach than what is typically taken. And if you do right by some of these things, it has a huge impact across the board, not just with employees, work satisfaction. But where we get really excited about it is when they come back and say, this stuff worked at work, but man, it really worked at home. And you're like, okay, that's the good
paycheck
stuff. Yeah, that's the paycheck.
Yeah, I'm on your website right now, which is Kintsugi, spelled KINTSUGI, .institute, all Kintsugi.institute. And if you go on the How We Help page, if you click at the top and go to How We Help, on the far right, it says Team Dysfunction. And I love this because my favorite one, if you read like 3 bullet points down, toxic interpersonal dynamics. I feel like that word probably gets tossed around too much, but toxic. But we've all seen toxic leaders and toxic personalities. So it's cool that you guys have kind of a pattern to hey, this is how you deal with these things. And I think a lot of the folks that will listen to this, another one is low trust and respect. That one is a big one. I'm a big fan of trust, and I kind of come from a world where we trust people first, and until they give us a reason not to trust them, instead of the other way where
and then you never get it back.
And then you never get it back.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool stuff. There's kind of 3 columns. If you go to that, How We Help is personal growth, leadership effectiveness, and team dysfunction. So there's a lot of folks that listen to this that are either just trying to figure out where they are in the world, or they've been out of the military or out of law enforcement for some time, and they were kind of heavy hitters in that world, and now they're kind of thrust into, they've somewhat got to start over, and we don't really navigate these topics well. We're kind of like a broadsword instead of a scalpel when it needs to be with our community, if you will. So it's really cool that you guys are kind of doing this and working like the team dynamics, which I'm sure there's stuff out there, but I don't know that anybody marries the two like you guys are doing, which I think would be really, really helpful. How how do people, if a company or a small business with a small, a team wants to contact you, is it the best way to go on your website, or what's the best way?
Yeah, so we've got posted throughout the website a couple of different, you'll see it almost on every page, is contact us, reach out to us. What we'll do is anytime a company reaches out to us, we're going to spend quite a bit of time just assessing the situation. So reach out to us, and we can correspond via email, but the real rubber meets the road when someone says, yeah, we kind of want you to see what's going on. And we'll talk to everybody. We'll interview everybody. And then we can get a really clear picture of what's happening on the team. What's exciting for me in doing all of that is Stacey sees the relationship dynamics so clearly. And she sits back and she watches and just is quiet. I'm more of the talker of the group. And she'll sit back and watch. And then she'll ask a question, and it's just like, wha bam, she'll drop the hammer there. But with the business experience that I've had, I can usually see what's happening in the business from a context, saying like, hey, here's what's happening. There's a lot of stress that's happening here, here, and here. Some business things that could really help the dynamic. And then she comes in with the relationship side, and we infuse it with the principles that are evidence-based, that work. And we try to get people to be aware of how they're impacting the system. And so that's what we do. So reach out to us on the website, and we'll sit with you, and we'll do some assessments with your team and see what would be effective.
And is that any business ever, like Betty's Diner down on Main Street versus?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It really is. There's maybe some wisdom in trying to narrow down, but honestly, the principles are applicable whether you're in a small team. Like we've worked with a small 13 people company.
Yeah.
The whole team was there, and we were talking with the whole team and identifying problems. And then we worked with a group inside of a very large company. And so the principles are applicable, and we can generally do a pretty decent job at assessing what's happening. And so, yeah, we can work with anybody.
Yeah, I read a book a couple years ago. I was actually trying to find it on my book list to ask you guys. Oh, it's called Ego-Free Leadership. Have you ever heard of that book?
I haven't.
Add it to my list. That sounds great.
Yeah, it's a really good book called Ego-Free Leadership. It's by Brandon Black and Shane. God, what's that guy's name? Shane Hughes, maybe. But it's kind of the same way. So does that work? Do you guys do these remote, or do you physically come in person to the company and do it that way?
Yeah, we can do both. What we like to do is physically go and meet with the team, at least right up front. We do a lot of our interviews remotely, scheduling interviews and that sort of thing. It takes a lot of our time. Even before we sign with anybody, we'll do all of the assessment before we sign with anybody, because there's value in just talking and understanding. But we like to go and meet with the team, and we'll spend some time with the team. Now, the most effective engagements are where we can spend some time with the team and then meet with everybody individually. Because then you can say, hey, here's what the situations are. And then we can start to coach individually on those things and how each individual is impacting the system. And we can do that remotely, the coaching remotely. And then we like to come back at the end and say, okay, let's come together. Did it work? How did we impact, and what more needs to be done? What's the path forward when we're not with you? And we can do that. We've got some fun things that we can do in person that are real effective. And
for you also do one-on-one sessions that, like you said, with that other person you were dealing with that kind of had some breakthroughs. So you do that. And then on the Healing is Golden side, if you just want to go straight for the jugular and just go straight to therapy, the website for that is healingisgolden.com, all one word, healingisgolden.com. And it's pretty straightforward. You just go on there. The landing page takes you right to a free consultation. And you can just click on that and then fill out the form. And I think you hit the nail on the head, right? When you click schedule a consultation, it says finding the right therapist is critical to your success. And I wanted to go back to something that Jared said earlier. You basically said something to the effect of they were giving you solutions instead of listening to I went to a therapist, and she just gave me, it was like my grandma or my mom telling me what you should have done was this. And I was like, why am I paying you to tell, like, don't you know the whole shtick here is like, I'm supposed to talk, you're supposed to nod, say a few things, then I figure it out for myself. Like that's like, I don't need you to solve my problems. So yeah. I
that
think
you're totally right. That fit is actually really critical. And that's actually one of the things that we talked about as we were setting this up, is like, we don't want people to spend the money to do a session with Stacey, and then be 1 or 2 sessions in and be like, yeah, this isn't working. Because then they've wasted money and they've wasted their time and they've wasted Stacey's time. So take 15 minutes. And right now, Stacey is authorized to take clients from Tennessee. That's where we established the company. That's where her licensing work is being done. We're hoping to expand pretty quickly into Colorado. If there's therapy, she can do it remotely. That's our primary. She's doing most of the work remote. So from Tennessee, we can start there, and then the website will tell you if we get expanded to Colorado. But yeah, take 15 minutes, talk to Stace, and she'll be able to figure it out.
Even if you're not in my state and you would just like to talk to a therapist for free for 15 minutes, it would not be therapy, but you can consult with me, and I can help you find the right kind of therapist, point you to the right organizations that will feel like a fit. I'm happy to do that, especially for military folks. I have a heart for that. And this is not on my website, and this is not something we typically lead with, but that will resonate with you guys. We've told you a lot of our journey and how we got here. Part of what compelled me to become a therapist came in March of 2020. I have an older brother by 2 years. He had just retired from the Air Force in January and took his own life in March. And that, you can imagine, I'm sure many people have similar experiences, was just life-changing in a lot of bad ways. But some of the sense that I ended up making of it was, I have some experience and I can help, and I like to help. And so if that is a thing that I can offer to people, just know that I have a heart for that. And that's part of what got me here.
Are you guys, a lot of our listeners actually live in Tennessee, in the Clarksville area. And are you guys familiar with the thing called the Davis Focus Project? Are you familiar with that? Brandon Davis, he used to be in our organization, and I can hook you guys up, because I think you guys are running in the same circles in the same state. And although they don't do, they're really focused on like human performance. But Brandon's got a pretty decent story of kind of similar, like some trauma and all this other stuff. So maybe we can hook you guys up, that you guys might be able to be mutually supporting.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Very, very different things, but kind of in the same space. And to go back to your brother, and not to pry. So if it's too much, just say no. Okay. But that is not uncommon, what happened to him. And I'm not saying that. There's so much, people always think it's PTSD. They're like, oh, it's PTSD. That's like a sliver of this pie of, it's not the whole thing. And so a lot of people, and that's kind of the nexus of why we started this, because I started it as a way because I couldn't find a therapist that was good. So I just thought I'd just do it myself and be my own echo chamber. And then Tyler came on the show, and he said some pretty significant, it's episode 3. If you guys ever want to go back, anybody that's listening, episode 3, it's actually, that's probably the number 2 performing episode we have, past Doug's. Doug White is episode 10. And that one is a difficult one. But Tyler, you had everybody kind of goes through that, and it's a cocktail. It's a dangerous cocktail that if you get lost in that and you don't reach out to a buddy, or, you've got to find an anchor somehow. And, it's my heart breaks for you, and nobody should ever have to do that with a sibling. But unfortunately, this is common. And it's, and for the folks that are listening to this that are either going through this, or you think you're going to be fine before you get out. Tyler, I remember seeing you it was like you were out processing. I don't know if I ever told you this, but you were out. We were in the same organization, and I worked on the staff, and I remember seeing you clearing, and I remember for some reason I was outside the headquarters. I don't know what I was out there for, but I remember didn't you have your car on like a trailer? Was your car on a trailer when you were moving?
No, that was probably somebody else.
Oh, but I
Does it
remember
help
you
if
were
I say
leaving.
yes?
No, I don't remember. I remember you. I'm sure it was you. You were leaving. I remember as you were like kind of excited about clearing. You came into the 3 shop to clear something, and when you were getting out of the Army, you were maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but were you excited to get out? I mean, there was an element of excitement.
There was, but I think it was all kind of, a house of cards. I don't think it was real, right? I think it was
like a
decision.
facade, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you tell yourself that, you're going out to do all these things, but I was just running away from all the shit that was going on, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought I was excited, but also even before I left, like I said, in the other episode, was my plans had changed 1,000 times before I even got a foot out the door. So I was leaving everything and going into absolutely nothing. And that didn't work out well.
Yeah. And you just get in that place where you lose your tribe, you lose your purpose, and you just feel like there's nothing, you feel like it's just easier if I'm just not here. And it, especially if you have good life insurance and you have a family, you're like, hey, I can solve everybody's problems. Like your brain starts to really think this and go like, oh, okay, the 2 + 2 is 22. This is going to work. And people get caught
rational.
up in that. Yeah, you rationalize it.
It's
you rationalize it.
Because
so
yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I described it as a way of we used to, if you're a burden in the unit or you're a burden to the people around you, we'd fire you, right? Like you got to carry your weight and you got to shoulder your responsibility. You got to get your work done. People's lives depend on it. Mm-hmm. But then when you get out and you can't seem to do anything right, you look at yourself as the burden, right? And you're now the burden to your family. It still has an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things. So and that's part of the reason why we did this, really when Tyler came on board, it kind of changed the trajectory of what we're trying to do here. And we don't have any advertisers. We don't get paid. This is just us trying to be better than we were yesterday. So, if you're listening to this and you feel that you might want to do something like that, or you're having those ideations, you can, I'm sure you hear it all the time, but the best thing that I think is just phone somebody that has context of what you're dealing with. If you can do that, or find somebody, or just anything, kind of can right the ship a little bit. Not a lot. It's not going to get better overnight, but it does get better, I think, eventually. So anyway, I didn't want to go down but we do kind of talk about that stuff here. And I think if more people normalize it and people just say, yeah, I felt like that before. Yeah, I almost did that, or, you'd be surprised how many people have come on the show that say exactly the same thing. Episode 6, Nick O'Kelly, who's my financial advisor now. I mean, he was in our unit, but he did try it. I mean, so, and then we talked to Andrew Eubank. Guys, there's a lot of guys that go through this, and gals too. So you're not the only one out there. I think it's actually pretty normal. I mean, not to make light of the situation, but people go through this. So
yeah.
It's so true. I appreciate that you guys talk about this. Grateful, actually, from the bottom of my heart that you do. And, sometimes when we have those kinds of thoughts, like you mentioned, Tyler, like
my family would be better if I weren't here, that kind of thing that does have such a visceral reaction. That's identify those thoughts and connect it to something that is more helpful. So I don't know what that would be for every person, and I don't know what that would be for you, but maybe my hope would be that sounds like a phone call. You know, and when we're in that emotional, mental state of feeling that way, it's not really helpful for me to say, no, everybody loves you, you're perfect, or I'm not going to blow smoke. Like you feel really bad, and you have your cognitions and your rationalizations, like we talked about, right? But maybe that's the wagon track that you guys can, you know, whoever is listening could create is call somebody. So 988, maybe Military One Source, whatever, you know, resources you can think of, or a friend, or a free 15-minute with me, whatever.
Yeah. So what's next for you guys with the Institute? What's on the horizon? What are you guys working on?
Mm-hmm. We're trying to get the word out. I think that's the key thing is we want this to be like, it's a labor of love right now, and we want to turn it into something that's going to be a bit more sustainable for our family. We've still got a lot of kids. Still, I mean, we have a lot of kids, but
5 kids.
Yeah. So our goal is really to take all that. We're doing a lot of different things, and the conventional wisdom is pick one and go after it. And we're like, hey, we love doing everything.
But ADHD, it's fun.
So it's really trying to get the word out and get our business growing. We'd like to take some of it online and offer some resources online to leaders and to teams, and grow that way. And eventually, would love to build out. Would love to be able to connect therapists and business, and business leaders more effectively. Mm-hmm. And so bringing more therapists on board to teach them how to speak with the language of business, and business leaders and executives to speak the language of therapy. And
that's what I'm excited about, is creating more Jared and Stacey's to go to more places.
Yeah. So that's our hope. That's our vision. We want to take the message out as broadly and as quickly as we can.
Yeah, I'm going to go to HR tomorrow and it's like, hey, can you guys call these guys?
Do you have any other footprint? Sorry. Are you like social media, Facebook, Instagram?
Our presence is mostly,
eventually, right?
Yeah, we've got some of that stuff out there.
Tough pill to swallow.
It is. It's really tough to do. We were fairly active in trying to in some of those arenas. We're going to get back into it a little bit more effectively. So we do have some presence on LinkedIn, where we're going to find a lot of our people. So we do try to actively post there. It's been a bit. We had a move in there somewhere, so we kind of got sidetracked with that.
Colorado this summer.
But yeah, so we're on LinkedIn. You can find the company profiles on LinkedIn. We do have a Facebook page. It's not active, so you're not going to find us there.
We're just Gen X enough that we avoid that stuff. But
yeah.
we'll get there.
Also, I think with your target audience, you can kind of skip TikTok and Instagram with any luck.
Yeah. So definitely you won't see me doing any TikTok dances now, but
thank God.
Yeah. Right.
My daughter tries to get me to do those all the time.
I mean, you got to do it once.
My wife will indulge her and they'll do it, but I can't. I'm like, get the camera out of my face.
I don't have that in me.
Yeah. So,
yeah, if people are interested, you can go to Kintsugi Institute. That's KINTSUGI.institute. And that's where you can find there, or you can go to healingisgolden.com if you live in Tennessee, and or just like Stacey said, you want to just talk, go this healingisgolden.com, and we'll link to all this in the show notes.
Cool.
If people need access to this stuff, we'll put it in there. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time. That's like 2 hours and 10 minutes. It seems like it went by really quick. I actually this is one of my more enjoyable ones, because it's cool to get the perspective of a guy that's been at that level, kind of top down. And then there's a whole nother element of having your wife who is a therapist, like, in there too. Yeah. So I think
it's cool.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic for sure, because she not only had to live with everything, but has that therapy side of it locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the right way to put it. She had to live with it. It was a pain.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
she can look at it from, the inside and the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Unique.
Is there any last things you guys want to, any parting thoughts that you have for folks, or anything that you want to tell, if you got one thing to get out that we didn't cover, what would that be?
I guess my mind's still kind of on that final topic. Just reach out, let somebody know, just talk to somebody. One of the ways that I do therapy is something called IFS. And in IFS, we talk about parts of self a lot. And maybe it's helpful in your darkest moments to just tell yourself, there is a part of me that is really hurting. There's a part of me that's having these really dark thoughts. And to recognize that that's not the entirety of who you are or your life experience, I think is actually really helpful and powerful.
And I think also to piggyback, oh my God, I said it.
Just say it.
Wait,
Yeah,
does this
sorry.
happen? Does this happen in corporate America? Tell them
Piggyback
the
off
thing.
what the commander said.
There's
Yeah,
so
do you
much
have like
There's so much jargon.
Oh man. No, but again, make that phone call. Cause the person, if they come from your line of work or they have your specific background, they might be dealing with the same thing, and they probably haven't called anybody. So you calling to kind of get something off your chest might turn to them getting something off their chest.
Right. Amen.
So, and then making that impact is, it's exponential at that point.
For sure.
Yeah. Jared, what about you? What's your one thing to quote, what was that movie with Billy Crystal and
City Slickers?
City Slickers.
Oh, there you go. No, we covered a lot of ground tonight. I'm so grateful that we could talk through this stuff and talk with you guys about it. So I probably just circle into 2 points. One is really that the stuff underneath is what's going to have the impact. And if you will just venture there as a business leader, bring it into your business, as a middle manager, as an employee, if you'll attempt to go there, it works and it's super effective. And I tend to think you get that stuff right, and the rest of the stuff is top level problems. You can tackle that stuff, but you get the stuff underneath right, then you're going to be making a lot of progress at any level of the company. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I love talking with you guys because it's really clear to me. Tyler, I love the way you said it. You have a really strong sense of sort of right and wrong in what's like, you see stuff that's not okay. You see stuff that's not working right. You want to fix it. Like, don't lose that. Like, don't lose that self-identity. And I think that leadership and the transition you guys are making is super tough. It requires the work of being self-possessed, of knowing who you are at your core. And when you know who you are at your core, you can tackle anything.
It's so true.
You can tackle anything. And that's what's going to make leaders more effective. Leaders be the people who other people want to follow. And that's what helps employees be, the ones that are getting the stuff done. And anyways, I hear that in what you guys are talking about. I think that's super important to do that work and get there. So we're so grateful to talk to you guys about this stuff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was awesome having you guys on. This was a great conversation. Like what Thad was saying, it's just it's a whole world I'll never, probably at this point, ever get to see in my life. You know what I mean? And I don't know if I ever want to go there, but super interesting because it's such a large company. It's everybody knows it. You see it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to get the insight.
Yeah, we're really glad to hear things.
We'll have to have you guys on again, and we can deep dive some other things that we're always interested in. And
yeah, for sure.
I have some questions for Nissan about some on their truck line that I had a Nissan Titan. But
man, I went to go test drive. I was looking for a new truck, and I went to go test drive one, and they said I can't leave the parking lot because they're all getting recalled. And I said, well, that's not cool.
Oh no! Oh no!
I actually
just
love
get you in trouble.
I love I had a Titan. I love that truck. But it had some issues though. Yeah. But anyways, that's another topic.
Another time.
Yeah. So, but guys, thank you so much, Jared and
Absolutely.
Stacey Haslam. You can get them. And once again, it's Kintsugi Institute, kintsugi.institute. You can head over there. And if you're a leader in business or you just want your company to be better, you should contact them and they can help you out. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
well, I think that'll do it for us, guys. Thank you so much for coming, and let's do it again sometime. I really
Absolutely.
enjoyed this one.
Likewise.
Thank you, guys.
We love talking with you guys. Thanks for letting us be on with you guys. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.